Farmers and ranchers form the backbone of life on this planet, and Farming Simulator 19 lets you step into their boots. From growing a wide variety of crops, to raising livestock, and even training horses, you'll be amazed at how many hours you can sink into such a simple, repetitive game without even noticing. While Farming Simulator does let you walk around the world in first-person perspective, the vast majority of the game is spent driving a wide assortment of tractors, loaders, and combines. Using these tools and all their associated attachments, you can plow, cultivate, sow, and fertilize fields before harvesting the crops. If animal husbandry is more your style, there's a variety of livestock to take care of as well. You can even be a lumberjack. Controlling these complex machines has been necessarily simplified. Hooking a tractor up to a piece of equipment requires only getting the attachment points close enough together and pressing a single button. As a just-in-time help system, all the controls for the vehicle you're driving, along with any attached gear, is displayed in the upper left corner. While there's a few cases where the game won't tell you when you're doing something wrong, particularly around harvesters, it's not too hard to figure out how to get any given piece of machinery to work. Once in the driver's seat, unless you're traveling between fields, you're basically just driving in a straight line before turning around and driving back a little bit to the side of where you just were, over and over again. It's quite a challenge to get a truly straight line and maximize your efficiency, so there's still plenty to pay attention to. While it seems monotonous, it also creates a series of small, very achievable objectives. Because each doesn't take very long, I found that I would often be doing one more task well after I intended to call it a night. On top of that, you're usually monitoring AI action on other fields at the same time. Beyond the actual farming, you also must make sure all your vehicles are maintained and fueled, as well as take care of transporting your goods to market. Once you've received the money from selling the fruits of your harvest, you can then use it to buy new equipment, fields, and animals. Unfortunately, the new equipment doesn't generally change much about how you play the game. It either makes existing mechanics more efficient, or enables new crops to be utilized. Because every crop is basically the same process, however, it doesn't really feel like there's true progression. Plus, every purchase is usually so expensive that it takes tens of hours to afford one. After 70 hours of play, I had only purchased one new field, the equipment for one new crop type, and a single sheep pen. Granted, I splurged on a semi-truck to make hauling goods easier, but that's still a lot of time for very little change. Farming Simulator doesn't really have an ending, and even if you counted purchasing all the fields as completion, it would take hundreds if not thousands of hours. That being said, there's a lot of ways to change up your experience. To start with, there's 2 maps available. While there's not a whole lot of difference other than field shapes and how many hills there are, it does add variety. On top of that, there's all sorts of gameplay options. Steps can be added to the farming process, like requiring lime to be spread on fields, or plowing to be performed in order to get maximum crop yield. The speed of crop growth and time itself can also be adjusted. You can even make the game easier or harder by changing what the average price for goods is. If you enjoy the base game mechanic, it's hard to imagine running out of ways to play. There are no moral hazards in Farming Simulator, unless you count the ability to drive large farm equipment around like a maniac. While there's no real consequences for colliding with another vehicle, the game does penalize you by forcing you to stop as if hitting a brick wall. Sometimes it'll put your tractor into a position from which you can no longer move, or even cause you and/or your trailer to tip over. When that happens, you have to reset back to the store, losing any goods you were hauling. There's no character interaction to speak of, and any hardly visible people at all. While you do create a character at the beginning, the only time it's visible is when viewing the cockpit of the tractor you're driving from the external camera. In order to efficiently work all of your fields, you'll quickly end up relying on hired workers to do many of the tasks required to grow crops. For the most part, these workers are easy to use and good at their jobs. The system is not without flaws, however. Sometimes a worker assigned to harvest a field will miss crops for no discernible reason, or when planting a field, will start working on an adjacent field and destroy the crops already there. But the real pain point here is simply that the workers cannot do enough to truly allow you to run a farming empire. Taking harvested goods to a silo or selling point, caring for animals, mowing grass, and performing vehicle maintenance are all tasks that can only be done by the player. I could imagine running as many as 10 fields this way, but with more than that, I feel that the list of things to do would pile up. The game does offer a multiplayer mode that allows for co-op play, which would mitigate this issue if you have friends to play with. A graphical glitch causes the other major pain point. While harvesting crops, the visible plant can disappear without that spot actually being harvested. It will still show up as fully grown on the map, but otherwise there is no visual indication of where these crops are. When you do manage to run over them with a harvester, the crop will suddenly reappear for a moment before disappearing for good. While this is a minor bug, it reduces the overall yield of a field and is frustrating when trying to get every last dollar out of a harvest. There was clearly a lot of time and attention paid to building the models for all of the attractors and farming equipment you can use in Farming Simulator. Each is incredibly detailed, including all of the moving parts. The cockpits are just a little less impressive, as certain elements like exterior camera monitors are obviously faked. Outside of a dealership though, it's likely the best look you'll ever get at these machines. Given the quality of the vehicles, it's a pity that the surroundings look more like a game from 10 years ago. Plants jet out unnaturally from the obviously painted terrain, and are themselves fairly low quality models. Buildings fare a bit better, but still feel underdone compared to the vehicles. While most games have level of detail settings to avoid rendering too much at a time, Farming Simulator takes the technique to an unfortunate extreme. Even in first-person mode, it's not uncommon to see lower detail areas around you, and once you start zooming out in the external camera, the effect is too blatant to ignore. Entire fields of crops just pop in as you get closer to them, along with trees, buildings, and other features. I could understand such a decision for older devices, but when running on a gaming rig, I would have really appreciated the ability to crank up the immersion. Without anything to worry about, Farming Simulator 19 gets a perfect 5 out of 5 for morality. However, the lack of any real progression throughout my 70+ hour playthrough, and some needed enhancements to the helper system, drop its quality score to 4 out of 5. It's still an excellent game, especially for those who want to bring a little outdoors fun into their home.